Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is BGG bringing you the Straight Talk Radio call for Tuesday, September 22nd. Thanks for tuning in. Before I get going, I want to make sure that I thank everybody who makes DinarUpdates.com the website that it is. You can follow us on Twitter at DinarUpdates. You want to make sure, especially at this late date, that you're part of the Deuce list, Dinar Updates Currency Exchange list. On the right side of the blog, right side of the Observer, or right side of the forum, there's a little gray box. You put your first and last name and your email address in there. Click Add Me, and you're in. If you have a problem with if you're not getting our emails, or you and you want to, or you are for whatever reason not on the list and you're supposed to be, just email duresponse@comcast.net. We'll see if we can't get that rectified for you. Also, I want to make sure I thank all of our faithful supporters out there in the community. Dinar Detectives, IQD Calls, Dinar Recaps, anybody who's told somebody about us or forwarded an email, thank you. We appreciate that. We couldn't do it without you. Let's get to the news this morning, because there's a ton of it. Yesterday, Moody's put out a provisional rating for Iraq's bonds. I don't know exactly. I'm not even going to bother trying to interpret what that provisional rating is. It's probably very similar to the other two. But it was just, as I understand it, was just a rating on the bonds. However, having read it over, it's more than likely all the same data that they would issue a sovereign credit rating on Iraq. I mean, it basically is going to read roughly the same. So whatever their credit rating is, that's going to be about the same thing for their, roughly the same gist is going to be what they've already portrayed for their bonds. So, and I don't know if they'll even bother looking at it any differently. So that's good news. Very interesting. Moody's put out a credit rating for Iraq's bonds. Going over again on the options, just real quick. They seem to be really spreading around the money at this time. Now I don't know exactly what the amount situation is. I'm kind of curious as to why it's as high as it is, but there's a huge number. Looks like 40 different entities involved in the currency auction these days. So that's fairly big. There was a number of, I'm going to read this. This was a key phrase as it relates to the anti-money laundering law that I put in yesterday's blog. So the Parliamentary Finance Committee said after the rise in the dollar exchange rate, noted the existence of mafia supported by some political decision makers in Iraq, and there are names of accused of smuggling currency and money laundering sent to the Iraqi judiciary and the banking sector and the central bank. According to this, the central bank will be the right place to take legal action. On that same note, Chalibi reveals corruption files to Iraqi politicians and ministers, of the most prominent of them being al-Maliki. So Chalibi was saying that late yesterday. Big, huge article that I talked about on last night's news time just for a little bit. There was a report out that said there's movements in the backstage of the National Alliance for Change. And the actual title said this. It said movements in the backstage of the National Alliance for Change a Body. Did not mean that they're going to change a body. It means that there was some change. A body was involved. And it pointed out, and this is an article that's on the blog, it pointed out that there was a huge blow-up between Abadi and Maliki, I would suspect from the writing of this, last Thursday or Friday. They were in the headquarters of Abadi, began shortly after the beginning of the meeting. They were shouting between the two men. Maliki was angry, stomped out of the office. Maliki called them traitors and agents of the English or the United States is what he was referring to, in reference to the party leaders who were with him, Maliki, and turned to Abadi, including al-Rakabi, Tariq Najim. By the way, and notably, I talked about Rakabi a long time ago, and this Tariq Najim, that he has been a loyal Maliki supporter for a long time. That guy has been on. He was actually one of the guys that Maliki himself put forward as a nomination for the potential prime minister at the same time that Abadi was. So that's a crazy turn of events just recently for people who don't know, just for kind of a peek in there. This Tariq Najim character switch inside, huge news. and it said Abadi owned, and I take this statement. There's a bunch of these statements that I'm going to talk about. I take this next statement where Abadi said, in context, said the Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi, he knew that some close friends, they will be essentially turned against us after these reforms. So, I mean, I think what he's doing is he's kind of walking in keeping with his psych profile, by the way, his CIA profile. He's kind of even in this situation, he's kind of a middle-of-the-road guy, rightly dividing, what goes on, kind of a peacemaker character. He's essentially saying that he's saying that Maliki was his friend, and now he's going to be turned against him. He's not coming out and dropping the hammer. Even now, he's saying that some of our friends are going to be turned against us after these reforms. And Alawi, very plainly, anybody, there's going to be people that jump up and down and say I'm wrong, this, that, and the other thing, and what it boils down to is they're wrong. Alawi is apparently, it's coming to light that he's the bigger crook as any of these characters. And, on Forbes, 15 characters are on Forbes' richest list in the world, and there are 15 Iraqi politicians, and Alawi is one of them. There's just no plausible explanation for that, other than he was in this corruption up to his eyeballs. And by the way, little side note in the history lesson is the United States removed Alawi as a proxy or an interim prime minister because at that time it was in the early 2000s. At that time, Abadi had run the most corrupt government in Iraq's history, even more so than Saddam, according to some reports. So just a little history lesson there. There are those that are, and I was mistaken about this concept. I thought, my thought process about this was that potentially some of the internal members of the Dawa party were kind of on the sly asking Abadi to resign from the Dawa party in accordance with this new party's law, and then potentially, I think they really needed him, Maliki and some of his hardliners in the Dawa party needed Abadi to leave the Dawa party so that they kind of regain some control there. I don't think that's what that was all about at all. I really think they're external parties who are, for instance, Hakim and Sadir have come out and said if there is such a thing as a replacement of Abadi, it's not coming from the Dawa party this time around. So I'm kind of curious that, and I'm kind of thinking out loud here, I think that whoever this external conversation is coming from, it appears to me that they're asking Abadi to distance himself from these characters at this point because a lot of them are going to go down, and they're just saying that for the sake of his national reforms to go well, he needs to do that. We did talk about this National Reconciliation Project. It is on the bottom of the blog today. I'll probably replace it sometime today. But it was a conversation from Fuad Massoum, and it was an interview. And they talked about the completion of the draft for the national reconciliation of the country. And there's a couple people give me a hard time about what does that actually mean. Here's what that means. It is some kind of a national program that puts back together the Kurds, the Sunnis, and the Shias. And the Shias really need to move forward. They need to step out and embrace this reconciliation concept because it's the only thing that's going to stop the division of this country. And that for them, for Fuad Massoum to be saying this and saying that Abadi is even behind this is a huge step because the Shia hardliners wanted nothing to do with reconciliation. They wanted to pound the Sunnis to dust. They want to minimize the Kurds at every point. They make bad deals with Kurds and steal their money. And all along, while they've been doing this, they've been robbing Iraq blind. So for Abadi to be starting this whole anti-corruption campaign and reaching out to all the other various parties and kind of putting this country back together under the umbrella of this project of this national reconciliation program, which is going to be kind of part of the conversation between the National Guard law. National Guard law will not go until Maliki's gone. He can't hardly stand that whole idea. Takes away his private army. So under that whole umbrella will come the National Guard law as well. And I'm kind of talking in big, broad sweeps here because none of this is it's good stuff for Iraq. It's moving forward. This national reconciliation thing, they hadn't talked about this for a long time. It's kind of stunning to me that Fuad was this pointed about it, and he was talking about it coming right after the feast. I think a directly germane topic to some kind of a dinar shift in value has to do with that investment law coming right after the feast, which is, according to the Council of Ministers, is going to be done the 28th. So today's the 22nd. That's going to be done the 28th. Look for some of this stuff to start popping up about the 29th. This is a crazy event. I mean, they haven't talked about this concept seriously talked about it for a couple of years. I mean, there's been conversation thrown around back and forth, but it was never, I would call it, never really reality. I mean, it was just some of these rich politicians had kind of given a little bit of lip service, but this here looks serious. There was an article, and I talked about this, Abadi is torn between his national loyalty and his party affiliation. Key paragraph in there, in order for Abadi to go down in history, I don't think I'm going to go down that road. But it basically is pointing out exactly what I said. This is the in fact, I think that was from Rudolph, I'm not mistaken. But very good read, and it is in the Current Iraq News forum at Dinar Updates. And by the way, we're opening that up to everybody as of today, so it's not going to be a private forum anymore. You don't even have to log in to read it. You can just go there, click on the Iraq News thread, and you can get right in there. But that article talks about Abadi's, his consternation between his national loyalty and his party affiliation, and that's just outsiders. I don't think obviously he's made it no secret that his loyalties are with his predominantly his loyalties are national oriented. Interesting, and the final, probably a very interesting piece. The title reads: Iraq cannot hold anyone of the money laundering of the delayed adoption of the Money Laundering Act. There's kind of a translation issue there, but it points out that they have responded, and this is exactly what I said. And I know how it sounded. I know that it sounded like it was guru gibberish, that there was a hard deadline of October 1st from the World Bank and the IMF that they get this anti-money laundering law passed. However, it is here in black and white. It said that the adoption of the Anti-Money Laundering Act before September 31st by the House of Representatives, blah, 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 blah. Doggone it. And it's in this article. And it essentially says that they responded to the IMF and the World Bank with that. Here is a piece of that. Oh, here it is. Anti-money laundering law in Iraq is one of the conditions the IMF fund had, which organizes the movement of capital to and from Iraq and prevents the exodus of funds from Iraq illegally. So, and in fact, I know it sounds guru-ish, but it says right here, next paragraph down, said the anti-money laundering law will regulate the movement of funds to and from Iraq, and is one of the main conditions of the IMF and the World Bank and other international financial institutions on capital movement. So, that's plain as day. They said it in the open, is that those were have-tos, and they were by September 31st. More than likely, another have-to is that they have to go directly after this corruption. So that was, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and tweet that while we're sitting here. I'm going to hit everybody with a tweet on that particular article, because it was that's pivotal, that's huge, and they've already done that. But the only question is now, when do they actually go and implement it and go after these people? And there was an article today talking about they're doing that right now. As soon as that law is essentially published in the Gazette, they apparently, from what I'm reading here, is that they go start picking people up, and Maliki may well be one of those on that list. So there's any more fantastic news or emergency news, I'll have another call later on today. But that's the good news for the day. And but you know what? By the way, before I get going, it's really unfortunate in this community that there are so many people kind of dropping out, and it has to do with just unrealistic expectations. People have listened to these crazy gurus over and over and over and over, and they've said just the most outrageous things. I get it. I understand. I'm with you. I've heard the same things myself, and you scratch your head and you wonder, is it real or it's never been real. None of it's been real. But here's the truth of the matter is that this is an investment, has always been real. How will it turn out? It's anybody's guess. I'm based on what I'm reading right here. I like what I see. And in that regard, I'm willing to hang in here and see how this thing finishes out. May not be that long before we see how it's going to finish out. But it's just tragic that people have listened to these idiot gurus, lost money, done silly things, and as a consequence are just kind of, I see it all the time. I'm just heartbroken over it. What should be an incredible investment, an incredible opportunity, is just, so many people have done it a disservice. And some of the people that you're familiar with that get posted all the time right now, they're the worst offenders. So I apologize to anybody who gets the idea that that's what we've been up to. Not. I mean, we're still doing news, still commentating in the news, and keeping it about the news, trying to relay real information. So quit listening to those crazy people out there. People that just want to that just have some psychosis about being heard. They talk for the sake of talking. Appreciate everybody for tuning in today. Stay tuned to DinarUpdates.com. We will continue to bring you Dinar news, Dinar info, and Dinar commentary as we're able. Have a great evening, and make sure you tune in for an extended news time with Million Day on our chat room at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a great day.